Hello, we're going to learn about learning. This is part one, and we're going to try talking about classical conditioning. So here we go. First of all, what is learning? Learning requires three things. It requires something that's relatively permanent. Okay, so it has to stick around for a while. It can't be just something that goes in one ear and out the other. So cramming for a test and remembering it really quickly for the test or the quiz and then forgetting it isn't learning because it's not relatively permanent. Okay? It has to change behavior. It has to change your behavior, and it has to be due to experience. So this throws out anything that comes naturally to something. It's not because of an experience. So an innate trait for an animal or something that they just do because that's what they are, so they're hardwired to do, that's not learning. It has to be due to an experience in order to get to learn, okay? Habituation occurs in learning when you receive the same stimulus over and over, okay? And when you receive it over and over, you lose, you lose sensitivity to it. Okay, so you lose your sensitivity to the stimulus. Habituation and adaptation from your sensation perception unit, they kind of get confused because we had adaptation, which was when we have a stimulus, we eventually don't notice it. So, for instance, if I have this noise in the background, this noise, I might not notice it. And that would be adaptation. I just adapted into my surroundings. Habituation means it doesn't affect me at all. With adaptation, if that noise changed, I would notice it right away because there was a change. But with habituation, I lose my response to it because it's happened so often. And then finally, associative learning. Associative learning is just kind of a catch-all term for all the types for both classical and operant conditioning. All right, and so that's what associative learning is. It means you learn to associate one thing with another. Okay, so let's just jump right into classical conditioning. There's 5 major parts with classical conditioning that you need to understand. The first two kind of go together. There's unconditioned response and unconditioned stimulus. First thing you know about classical conditioning is that classical conditioning requires something something that happens just naturally. So, for instance, salivating happens naturally. I don't have to learn to salivate. I just salivate. Making my heart beat fast happens naturally. I don't have to learn to do that. So something that happens without me really having to think about it, that's classical conditioning. If it requires me to learn to think and to kind of be more cognitively aware of what's going on, that's not classical conditioning. That'll be what's later. That's operant conditioning. That's with rewards and punishments and whatnot. Classical conditioning doesn't have any of that. Classical conditioning is just pairing two things together, and the response is as a normal, natural kind of behavior that you don't have a whole lot of control over. Okay, so the uncontrolled stimulus is something that causes this uncontrolled response. So the unconditioned stimulus, I keep saying uncontrolled, unconditioned stimulus causes this unconditioned response. So the classic example is the bell and the dog and the so and the food. And so food, I'm sorry, food would be then conditioned stimulus. Food makes the dog salivate. All right, so I don't have to do anything. I just show dogs food and they'll start to salivate, right? That doesn't require anything. A neutral stimulus is something that to start off with, has no effect on the person or the animal. So a neutral stimulus in this case would be a bell. In this example, if I went up to a bell before I had trained or conditioned this dog, and I rang a bell, the dog wouldn't do anything, right? However, here's where the magic happens. If I take this bell and I add it when I give out the food, and this has to be done rather quickly. It has to be like between usually experts say between 1 to 1.5 seconds. So it has to happen really quickly afterwards for classical conditioning to work effectively. So if I pair the bell and give the food, so I show the bell, and the food go ding and show them, eventually that dog is going to start to associate this bell with the food. because every time that he sees the food, he hears the bell. So he's going to associate those two things. And this bell then is going to become the conditioned stimulus. So the bell will now become the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response will be salivating. Okay, so you notice a couple things are the same. The unconditioned response and the conditioned response are both usually exactly the same. Okay, that's number one. Conditioned response and unconditioned response are usually exactly the same because you're going to salivate both times. One, originally you're going to salivate by food. Next, you're going to salivate because of the bell. You're still going to salivate because of the food. That's not going to change, but now the bell's also going to make you salivate. The neutral stimulus always becomes the conditioned stimulus, right? So these two are always the same. Neutral stimulus and conditioned stimulus. And then the only thing that doesn't, and then I guess the unconditioned stimulus still becomes a part because the unconditioned stimulus is still going to make you salivate. Food's still going to make the dog salivate. It doesn't require anything extra. It's just the additional now, you're going to have this bell. Let's try another example here. Let's try garlic. And okay, so let's say you go to an Italian restaurant with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and every time you go to this Italian restaurant with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you get a goodnight kiss when you go home, all right? And you went to this Italian restaurant, and your boyfriend or girlfriend, they really love garlic, so they put a lot of garlic on their meal. And so every time you kiss them, their breath smells like garlic breath, okay? Well, you go to enough of these restaurants, and after a while, you start to associate this garlic breath with the kissing. So let's kind of fill in the blanks here. The unconditioned stimulus is kissing, all right? And the unconditioned response is lovey-dovey. I don't know, you're lovey-dovey. Here we go. That's a psychological term right there, lovey-dovey. All right, so you kiss, you respond with this lovey-dovey feeling. Oh, I love it. All right. Now we take this garlic that happens to happen every time you go to this Italian restaurant. So you have this garlic in your boyfriend or girlfriend's breath. Always smells like garlic, right? Garlic before this isn't going to make you feel lovey-dovey. Garlic's just garlic. It smells. It smells like garlic, right? It's nothing. But when you combine it with the kissing, now you've still got this lovey-dovey feeling, right? And now you start to associate the garlic with this lovey-dovey feeling. And so now this garlic becomes the conditioned stimulus. So garlic by itself now is going to create a lovey/dovey feeling. Okay? So garlic became your conditioned stimulus. Remember, just like I said before, neutral stimulus always becomes the conditioned stimulus, and the unconditioned response is always the conditioned response. Okay? So classical conditioning, we pair two things together. The magic happens when these things are paired right here. And if you pair them close enough and often enough, they're eventually going to get going, and we're going to have a change in behavior. And that's all I've got for today. So hopefully that helped. Thank you.